Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you're listening. We are glad that you are joining us for this podcast. We are looking up a podcast for Christian women. My name is Carla Moore. I'm one of the co-hosts along with Kathy Pollard. I am in Denver, Colorado right now. She's in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we are just excited that you've joined us. We're going to have kind of an informal chit chat, non-topic day, which we're looking forward to. And we've been laughing, and we're probably going to laugh again during this podcast, but we're thankful that you've joined us. And Kathy, what's going on over there in Bowling Green?
Well, since it feels like I haven't talked to you in a million years.
3 weeks, right?
3 weeks, yeah. We didn't tell everybody that when the sessions came out, but we did record 3 of them in 1 week because you were going to be out of the country. And so now that you've gotten back and you're sort of rested,
Yeah, debatable.
Yeah. So you know your name, you know where you are, you know
Yes,
what
sort
day
of.
this is. So just to pack up and leave again because
Right.
you're a jet setter.
I
But
don't know if you call it a jet setter if we stay in the States, but yeah,
oh, you can only use that if you leave the country.
I guess so.
Oh, I
There's
did not
some
know
kind
that.
of neat little pictures hanging behind you. Who are those little people?
Yes, those are Rich and Jude. And since the last time we've talked,
Mm-hmm.
we have a third grandchild,
You need another one.
our first girl in the family. She was born Friday. I wrote down all the stats so I could share them at 2:43 p.m., 7 pounds, 13 ounces, 19 and a half inches long. Her name is Amara Eden. And
So,
both of those names are her, let's see, Emily's middle name and her mother's middle name. So
oh,
beautiful
what's
name.
Emily's middle name?
Amara.
It's a beautiful
Amara.
name. Yeah. Are they going to call her Amara, or is it
Yes.
going to have a nickname?
Yeah, Amara. Yeah. So she's so sweet. We had 3 boys. My sister had 2 boys. Our boys have had boys. And so this is the very first girl, and
Mm-hmm.
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
She's
Girl
going to
clothes are
be,
fun.
oh man, she's going to be well loved, well protected,
What does
princess
Rich
of
think
them
about her,
all.
though?
Well, I'm not sure yet because she's only been home, for a couple of days. But this morning, Emily sent a video of him. She was holding Amara, and he was off on the other side of the room, just looking at a little book and kind of singing and humming to himself. And so she was telling us he's doing such a good job, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
entertaining himself. And so I was glad to see that because I remember bringing home our second child, and then our
Yeah.
first had wanted nothing to do with me for a
Yeah.
few days. He was not happy.
Mm-hmm. How old was Gary when
He was,
his,
sorry, he was 2 years and 2 months old.
yeah. And Rich
So
is,
Rich is only 14 months old,
yeah.
much
Yeah,
younger.
that's exactly the age Jackson was 14 months old when Amy was born. And I remember the doctor telling Erin that the greatest danger to Amy was her brother at the time
Yeah.
because they're interested or they just
Mm-hmm.
want to like poke in their eyes and they don't know gentleness and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot of fun together when they get a little bit older. So well,
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank
Excited for
you.
you.
Thank you very
We'll have
much.
to share a picture next
Yes,
week or
definitely.
maybe let Emily, she might like to do that,
Mm-hmm.
share.
That would be great. Yeah.
Good deal. Well, what's
So,
been going on?
well, everything. It's warmed up here. I got to spend a day with my sister, and she's feeling better and better. It was so
Good.
good to see her and get to spend time with her. I've missed her, but she always plans fun times. And recently on one of our episodes, I had mentioned that when Neil would leave town, I'd eat junk food, those
Mhm.
cheap Totino's pizza
Uh-huh.
and little powdered donuts. So that's what she served. And because she said I had also mentioned liking toffee, she took those some of them, little miniature powdered donuts, dipped the tops of them in caramel sauce, and then put crushed toffee bits on top of that.
Oh man,
So
that sounds heavenly.
it was
That's
good.
the
It was
ultimate
good.
junk.
Yeah. So I was like, you know how to make people feel special.
Yeah. Well,
And
she listens.
she does. She does. And she had this fun little craft set up for us that we made pot heads. And they are,
Okay.
you paint pottery pots and into like these big women with big lips and hair rollers, and And then the plant that you put in it actually becomes their hair, you know.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I took
that's
a
fun.
picture of her. So we've named ours Laverne and Shirley. So
Oh, that's
I'll
fun.
share pictures of that. Yeah. But
Yeah,
we had a good time. And so it was great getting
good.
to spend some time with her. So.
Yeah, I'm glad she's feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of feeling better, I know I told you about my friend Alice, and I posted something on Facebook,
Yes.
but I don't think I said anything in the group about it. But she has, this is my friend Alice Stone. She has a kind of a rare form, and I believe it's a blood cancer. But it's the name of it, it's very rare, but it's a string of numerals and vowels, and I can't even say what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's it's in her blood, and she's been tested over and over, and it makes her really tired. It makes her nauseous, but she doesn't look sick, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
been something that, when someone has something that is almost invisible, I think that adds its own challenges to someone that's sick.
Yeah.
But she doesn't feel good, but she doesn't look bad. In fact, she's beautiful. But anyway, about 2 weeks ago, it must have been, well, we were on our way. So it would have been about 3 weeks ago. She texted me and told me that she'd gotten pretty much the worst news that you can get from this cancer.
Mm-hmm.
What it does, it eventually develops into the acute myeloid leukemia, AML.
Okay.
And usually that's what is the complication from this kind of cancer. And she was pretty nervous about it, and alternating between confidence and knowing that no matter what happened, that it was going to be fine, but yet at the same time not knowing what she was facing. So that was 3 weeks ago, and so they went down. They live in Lubbock, and they went down to Houston to MD Anderson for testing, and they were telling her that she's going to be there about 6 weeks because they would do all the tests and figure out a plan of action,
Mm-hmm.
and chemo, and then they were going to do a bone marrow transplant. And that is it's a very serious thing anyway, because you're basically killing all of your existing bone marrow and replacing it and letting it grow. And I'm probably not saying it exactly right because I don't understand a lot about it, but you are stripped of your immunity, and then you have to rebuild it. And so you're in isolation for a good long while. So
Oh,
anyway,
sure.
she was there for about, I don't know, less than a week while they were doing all this testing. And I was in contact with her just about every day, asking her how things were going. And about a week into our trip, she texted me and said, basically, you just can't almost believe this, but she does not have leukemia, because they had told her that her test results in Lubbock indicated that she had
What?
leukemia. But no, she had more testing done, and she was telling me things about blasts and all of these things that I don't understand, but she does. So she does not have leukemia, and they've already sent her home. And I just
What?
think it was un why is it unbelievable? Is what I told her.
Yeah, why do
Why do
we
we
say
pray
that?
big? We pray
Yeah.
big and we ask God for healing, and
Mm.
we don't understand everything about that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I need to understand. I'd like to understand more about prayer, because sometimes you think, oh, if enough people are praying, we thought about this with John. If enough people, it's like God can't hear you if it's just one. So let's a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of us yell really loud and pray. But God hears everyone. So I don't know. I don't understand why sometimes God's answer is no, and other times God's answer is a big yes. But for now, she's still going to have to eventually have a bone marrow transplant because of the type of cancer that she has. And Alice, if you're listening and I'm not describing it right, I'm sorry, but she can help us understand later. But it's an amazing thing. I was just so
Wow.
grateful, so thankful. And how often do people, it's like you wake up in a nightmare. This has happened to several family members,
Mm-hmm.
when all of a sudden, from one day to the next, you've got this diagnosis, or you've got this accident or whatever, and you pray, you want to just go back to the way it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, there's still some serious stuff going on inside her body, but it's not leukemia. So very, very thankful for
Wow.
that.
What an emotional roller coaster for
Yeah,
her to be told, in her case, what's the worst news?
right.
And this is what you have ahead of you and what to expect. And then to find out, never mind, that's
Yeah,
not the case. You do
yeah.
not have this. You're
And I
going
found
home.
myself, I was a little like frustrated with the doctors in Lubbock, like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't y'all read this right?
Mm-hmm.
But they may have, and this things just change. And
Mm-hmm.
I obviously can't
Wow.
explain it, but I'm very thankful. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it is pretty neat.
Hmm.
What else you got?
Well, I have some interesting gardening news. Did you
Okay.
know that 50% of the state's um, gardening zones have changed this year for the first time in a long, long time?
I don't even know what that means.
A growing zone, like we're a zone 6B here, which tells us based on our, frost date, here's what we can plan. Like when you get seeds or plants and it says does well in
Oh, yeah.
zones, whatever
Uh-huh.
to whatever, you're a number in there somewhere.
Okay.
So ours has been 6B. Well, it is now changed. Our temperatures have gone up by 5%, and our area is one of those areas that has changed.
Hmm.
And so our area is now 7A, which seems minor, but I was so excited because there are plants that are 7A hardy that I love that aren't 6B hardy. And one of those is gardenias,
Hmm.
which is my all time favorite. So, anyway, I thought I would share. There's a website you can go to and type in your zip code to see if yours has changed. But I'll share that in the group in case anybody else would get excited about that,
Yeah.
like I did.
Well, that makes sense. So I wonder what they're attributing the cause to, some kind of global warming type thing, which I know that there's some truth to that. I don't know that I go anyway, we don't have to go down that path. I'm sure I'll get myself
No,
in
I
trouble.
mean, average temperatures do change, but
Mhm.
the cause of that, I wouldn't say global warming, but,
Mhm.
but ours has changed. The average is now 5 degrees warmer
Yeah.
at different times of the year than it used to be, enough to change. So our gardening zone now is the same as what it was when we were in Richmond, Virginia,
Hmm.
and which we had a lot more growing possibilities there than we
Yeah.
did here. So I was
Yeah.
very excited about that.
You
Other
had more
news,
possibilities there than you did in Kentucky. I would have thought it would be
yes,
the other way around.
I did too, but they are actually a zone warmer than we are
Hmm.
here. Yeah, I thought the same thing when we first moved here, but
Okay.
no. The other things I wanted to share is when, we bred Peaches, it did
Hmm.
not take.
Okay.
So now she's on round 2,
Hmm.
and so far so good. We'll know for sure probably in about another week or so.
Okay.
So we're on round 2 of that. And then the back of our property, you'll know this, but not everybody else will know this. The back of our property is mostly, sort of wooded. There's a lot of, the back half of our property has a lot of blackberry bushes and pathways through the woods and things like that. There's a lot of deer back there. And I kind of like the cozy habitat sort of nature aspect of it, but we decided to have it bush hogged. And so Kevin Eubanks came out last week and bush hogged it for us. And he's probably going to have to do it a couple more times, a few months, do it again, and a few months later, do it again.
Yeah.
Just so that we have more cleared space, for
Hmm.
Peaches
Yeah.
to keep moving her around different parts of the
Does
property
that
and
take trees down too, or just
small
okay?
ones. But it actually doesn't, like when we did the same thing to the side of our driveway because it was all overgrown and wooded up, and it made a huge difference in how things looked. This one in the back hasn't made that big of a difference because there are so many bigger hardwood trees in the
Hmm.
back. And so we're leaving those up. But that was exciting for us because we've been talking about it. We should do this, we should do this, we should do this. And then when something actually gets done, it's like, hey,
Yeah, it changes the looks of everything. You have to send me a
it
picture.
does. Okay.
Sunlight comes in and
Yep.
well,
Yep.
neat.
And I made some cottage cheese that I finally liked. I've told you before that I've been trying it and I just haven't really been like the flavors just taste a little off to me.
Hmm.
And I think it's because normally you bring your milk up to a certain temperature and then you leave it in a jar on the counter for 2 or 3 days or whatever, and then you strain it and blah, blah, blah. And I just haven't liked the way it tasted. But this one, you make in the Instant Pot.
Okay.
And you could do it with, just regular milk, but you put the Instant Pot, bring it up to a boil in the Instant Pot, and then add freshly squeezed lemon juice and stir it, and then leave it for like an hour, I think. Um, and then strain it and salt it. And then you can add back a little cream or a little whole milk, so it's not
Hmm.
dry. It tastes so good.
Hmm.
It is so good. I've been putting it in my scrambled eggs and, just eating it like for a little protein snack in the middle of the day. So I'm excited. I finally found one that I like.
What makes the difference between large curd and small curd? Is that the way you strain it or something?
I
Or do
don't
you
know.
just,
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't
I
know.
am very picky about it. I know we've had that conversation before, but I would
Because you
like to
like
try to
large
make it.
curd, don't you?
Well, I think yeah, there's some small that I like too, but I think it's more the flavor and the liquid. It's probably going to gross people out, but like it's not too dry. I like for it to be not so dry. So when I find a brand that I like, I'm going to stick with it. But I would like to try to make that because maybe send me the recipe.
Yeah, I'll do that and I'll share it. And
So you said milk, lemon juice, salt, and pepper? No, no pepper.
no pepper. I mean, you could add it if you want, but
What do you strain it with?
cheesecloth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was so easy and tasted good, tasted fresh. It was amazing.
I'm going to be there in about a month. Get all kinds of things I put on my menu, my request menu from you.
Speaking of, you're going to be here in a month for Equipped, the workshop, and Heather Van Winkle came to Lehman Avenue last night, and she said that she's going to be here at Equipped, but she also showed me her brand new bag. Thanks to you, she bought a Portland leather bag.
Did she? What kind did she get?
It's a small, I don't know what kind it is, but it's a smaller
backpack
one.
or a tote or something.
It looks like a regular purse. It's just very small sized. But she opened it up and let me smell it because it has that gorgeous leather smell that I just love. And she was like, "You were an influencer," because she ended up getting her
influencer
own
of one
Portland bag. Yeah.
And that smell. I mean, I've had my backpack for I don't know more than a year, and it still smells wonderfully like leather.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's the best smell.
It is.
And they can't replicate it. You know how you get a candle for a library or a men's office, it's supposed to smell like leather and gross.
Yeah, it's strong. Yeah.
It does not. It does not.
Well, good to know.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm talking all the talking, but you and I received a message from Shelby Camp, and we always appreciate it when we get sweet, thoughtful messages. Thank you to those who have reached out to encourage us. But I wanted to share this because of something that she said. First of all, one thing she said was that she said, listening to you while I clean the house and wipe runny noses. That's a real pick me up. So, but what I wanted to point out is at the end of her message, she said, I pray for you both. And I know it meant a lot to you too, but that just meant the world to me because, we've mentioned on here before that you and I have a prayer together before we hit record. And just to know that somebody listening is praying for us also was so thoughtful. And we appreciate that. Thank you, Shelby, so much for that. That means tears to my eyes. That means a lot to us.
Well, I saw Riley Carter yesterday. She's lives up here in the Denver area. I want to say north of here. And I got to know her a few years ago. She took one of my classes here at Bear Valley, and we took one together. I sat in on Wayne Berger's Acts class when she was taking it. So she was telling someone else. I was standing there while she was telling someone else. She said, if you just like to eavesdrop on conversations, that's what I feel like when I'm listening to the podcast. It's like, I guess that's kind of like, but I mean, we always say it's like sitting around a table. So Riley, you're part of the conversation. Just you don't need to feel like you're eavesdropping. You just be part of the conversation. But if you start talking to yourself, that might be a little weird. I don't know. But it was fun.
Oh.
I was going to tell you, I know we're going to talk about some of the places that we saw on the trip, but we had something very interesting, a little scary.
Uh-oh.
I haven't told you about this.
Uh-oh.
This was last Friday, I think. It was on our free day. And everyone on the trip, they can just go their separate ways. They can do whatever they want. They can rest, or they can, hit it hard. So John and I went with Brian and Shannon to do just kind of to chill. And we were gonna go eat and, just do some easy stuff on that day. But we decided to take the metro we were going to eat at the Acropolis Museum. And so we headed down because our hotel was right on the corner and the entrance to the metro was right there, just a stairway that like 3 huge flights of stairways down. And there's the ticket booth, not a booth, but it's, like it looks like an ATM machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're standing there looking very obviously like tourists, and we're talking about, do we want a, a one way? Do we want a all day pass? Do we whatever? We're just talking amongst ourselves. And there was a guy there's an actual ATM machine attached to this ticket machine. And he says, where are y'all going? And so, friendly people that we are, we tell him we're going to do this and this and this, whatever. And so he kind of gave us some advice about the tickets to buy. And I didn't really know this until a little bit later, but Shannon said she noticed a couple of other guys that were kind of coming around, listening to us, or they were going to buy a ticket. I'm not a very suspicious person, I guess, and I don't think anyone's going to do anything. But anyway, she moved around and kind of blocked their view of us, what we were doing to buy tickets. And then we went down another flight of stairs to get to the train platform. And so we were standing on the platform for a while. We had to wait for the train like 5 minutes. And then we get on the train and there was nowhere to sit. And I had a backpack on, just my little brown backpack. And I started feeling like things were a little bit sketchy. There was these 3 guys, and there were people sitting in the seats, but they were like, it's kind of those kind of seats that they're facing each other. So there's a set of seats over here where they're facing each other and on the other side. And then we were just in the area, kind of like at DIA when you get on the train and you just stand there. So I went to the other side and I just immediately backed myself up against the doors, and my backpack was on. And John was on the other side by the doors that we came in. And these guys were kind of like hovering around, and they were talking. And I don't know what language they were talking, but they were like pointing up at the, how it tells you which train station is next and which one you're going to get off. And they were trying to talk to John. And I could see he was like looking at me kind of funny. And Brian and Shannon were moving around a little bit too. And we were all a little bit on edge, not afraid, but like these guys,
right.
They're not, they were kind of sketchy. And so John, I could tell he was like kind of hemmed in. He was like in the corner and they were on either side of him. And one was pointing up here and, they were moving around. And I could tell he was like doing this with his backpack. He'd had it over one shoulder and he had grabbed it, he was holding tight to it. And he started to kind of make his way over to me, and they were like blocking him. And the way he describes it was kind of like a clown car. Like he would go one way and one of them would go follow him. And the other one, it was like they were circling each other around those poles in the middle. And at this point, it was like, this is not, something's going on. And I never felt fear, but I kept making eye contact with one of the guys, which may not have been a very smart thing, but I was like, I see you.
I'm watching you.
And I know what you're trying to do something, and you're not going to get away from. I kind of wish you and I've had these. We think we should do a topic like things I wish I'd said.
That's right. You think about it later.
I wish I'd taken it, like lifted up my camera and gone take a picture of him. Like, I see you.
That's right. Start
anyway,
videoing.
at one point, video. At one point, kind of towards right before our stop, John just kind of pushed through. And I didn't hear him say it, but Brian did. And he told me about it later. John said, get out of my way. Because the guys were like, because the guys were blocking him from me. And, Brian was standing next to me. And so I wasn't afraid anything was going to happen. But then when we got off the train, 2 of John's zippers on his backpack were down. Not all the way down, but down. He's got one of those that has this zipper and this zipper and this zipper. And he's always real careful about where he puts things, and he puts them at the very bottom, and it'd be really hard to get them out. But so they were targeting us. So we were very obviously tourists. And so he was reading something about it when we got back that night, how this is exactly what they do. They in fact, one of them had this cloth that he was kind of holding, And they use that to kind of block other people's view. They like hold it up in front of whatever backpack they're trying to get into. And they were trying to like push him into the corner so that they could grab it at the next stop and run off. But he had hold of it real tight. And so while one of them is pointing up here and you know, it makes you look up there, the other one's like trying to get the zippers down. So anyway, nothing was stolen, but we were also kind of worried about the credit card. I can't remember what it's called, not scamming or phishing or something like that, where they can get the number by getting close to you. But we all had those kind of wallets that have the blocking, the RFID blocking thing. And you're also able now, you can turn your card off and on. So I went immediately and turned all of our cards off that we had with us. And but it just made me mad. Like if you people would just get a real job instead of spending all your time trying to steal from other people, you know, you'd work just as hard and you'd earn something honestly. So anyway, it was a little bit of excitement, and the rest of the day, John was like, I'm so mad. He kept thinking about it and just leave me alone, get out of my way. But it was a little funny thinking back on that. So anyway.
Yeah. And you have to know John for this to be as remarkable as it is, for him to say, get out of my way.
Yeah. That's when he told me, I was like, you said that?
Yeah.
And Brian said, I heard him. Yeah.
Wow.
Get out of my way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's just like such a good reminder that, you know, even stateside, but when you're traveling, you have to be aware of your surroundings and pay attention and be cautious, unfortunately.
Yeah. Somebody's always looking. And, you know, this is one of those things that I think I look forward to the most about heaven is that there's not going to be any of this kind of worry about being taken advantage of or being hurt. It's just a time of rest and peace. And you just don't have that here. So anyway.
You don't have to be suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
We had, well, Neil's been out of town all week. He's been in Omaha. And there was one night, you know, it's pretty quiet out here, but every now and then stuff happens. You've heard my stories. But there was one night when there was some kind of racket going on outside. I couldn't quite place what it was. And normally I can just dismiss it. You know, there's no telling. I mean, Peaches is out there knocking over her waterer sometimes. Yeah. But Ollie started acting up. You know, he was, excuse me, sorry. He was doing that thing where his ears perked up, you know, and then he jumped down and then he started barking and then he ran to the door and I was like, ugh. Yeah. Because if it was just me hearing something, I could probably let it go. But for Ollie to start acting that way, then it makes me a little bit nervous. But again, that's one of those things where in heaven, you don't have to worry about being fearful and wondering if the boogeyman's coming to get you. And
did you ever figure out what it was?
No, I have no idea. Well, I mentioned Peaches because the next morning when I went out to take care of her, we keep a smaller waterer in the barn. It was out in the middle of the field. And sometimes when it's empty, she does that. She like kicks it out. But I don't think that's what I heard, but you just never know. But at one point, Neil had said, he had texted me, oh, I slept through my alarm one morning. And he
this time, or are you talking about the time you told us about before?
This time. And it was, I don't know why, but I'd slept through my alarm and he had texted me when I usually get up and I didn't reply. And he said, I was starting to be fearful. And I was like, don't you dare send Jeremy Waddell over here again. And he said, wow, do you remember that time the gas? And I was like, yes, but we've turned that off. Like the gas is cut off. And he goes, well, what if a burglar came in the house? Well, so I was like, don't, whatever it is, you know, I'm fine. Do not send anybody over here at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Being dead is preferable to being startled awake, right?
Exactly. Or somebody seeing you less than, you know, presentable.
John has told me about a time that when he was young and Tommy and Anita, his brother and sister, were still at home. And they had watched some kind of scary movie, which probably was some kind of Disney scary movie, you know. And so he was going to try to scare his sister. Tommy's like 7 years older than John, and Anita's like 6 years older. So she probably was like 15 or something. And so he was going to scare her. So he was like going around the corners of the house, and he was getting ready to jump out at her. And apparently Tommy had the same idea at the same time, because he was coming around the other way, and he and Tommy scared each other. But Anita was laying there like she could hear something, and it was like, and she was like, what is that? What is that? And she said it kept getting faster and faster. And it was her eyelashes on the pillow. She scared herself because she was getting more scared. Her eyes were opening and closing faster and faster, just blinking. And I thought, well, I can see me doing that.
Me too. That sounds like
Scaring
me.
myself with my own eyelashes.
One time I thought we were having serious plumbing issues when Neil was out of town, because I kept hearing, when I would go to the sink, I kept hearing the bathroom sink in our bedroom. I kept hearing this, and I was like, what in the world? And I didn't know it, and it wouldn't stop, and I didn't know it. And it wasn't until much later, after I'd done all this research online, that I'd realized, that's an idiot. I realized that I didn't turn off my electric toothbrush. So I brushed my teeth and stuck it in the little cup, and it was vibrating in the cup. So every time I went into the bathroom, I was hearing, and I thought something was coming out of the pipes.
Well, you're pretty.
Oh, wow.
No, I have done stuff like that.
You
And
know
there's
what I've
always
learned
the toy basket that if you bump it the wrong way, it
something
speaks
starts
to
playing.
you. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's terrible in the middle of the night.
You know what I've learned about myself this week?
What?
It's a very important discovery. I learned that I eat out of bowls only.
All right.
That's
You
it.
like food that comes in bowls?
Yeah, apparently. Because, I don't run the dishwasher every night when Neil's out of town, and I was unloading it this morning. It had been a few days. And everything that I pulled out were all these different shapes and sizes of bowls: a large bowl, a regular bowl, and a little bowl. No plates whatsoever.
I'm sure it was all salad.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All salad.
All salad. Or cereal. Or can you put Totino's pizza in a bowl?
All Buddha bowls.
Shred the pizza on top of your salad. We are
what
digressing.
You know what I saw? I wrote this down, but I've debated sharing it on here, but I'm going to anyway. I saw this. Somebody shared this.
I love it when you say that.
Somebody shared this meme thing. And their comment when they shared it was sad but true. And here's what it said: if you're not ready to be talked about, lied on, misunderstood, used, called fake, stand alone, then you're not ready for ministry.
Yikes.
Yeah. And first of all, I hate it when people share stuff like that, because it makes us look like we're just always playing the victim. Woe is us. This job is so hard, blah, 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 blah. And when I see things like that, I always want to comment, but I don't, because why? Yeah. But, who doesn't go through that? I'm not saying that it doesn't happen or that it can't happen in ministry. I'm not saying that. But whose life is untouched by any of those things, no matter what you do? So I just, first of all, I don't appreciate it for that reason. But secondly, where it said, then you're not ready for ministry, you're Y-O-U-R. And I'm like, it's bad enough that you're making people in ministry look like a bunch of whiny babies, but now
you make it look like too.
We don't even have good grammar. If you're going to whine about something, at least spell it right.
Oh, that is awful.
I just see that kind of stuff and I'm going, great. Way to represent.
Oh, I hate that too.
Sad though? Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I know bad things happen to good people, and hard things happen, but I honestly can't. I mean, those things that you read, I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe I've forgotten some of the bad things that have happened, but I just really feel like it has a lot to do with our attitude about it, and the big old bag of chips on our shoulder Like if we're
Yes.
expecting it to happen, or if we're waiting for someone to hurt our feelings or insult us. So I don't
You
know.
find what you're looking for.
Mhm.
You find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But
Ugh.
anyways,
Yuck.
yeah. Ugh. On a
Well,
brighter note, showed up in my memory 8 years ago. Carl said, "Food tastes better than muscles look."
the Weight Watchers motto, one of them is nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. So I think those are two opposite ideas. I like Carl's better.
I do too. I do too.
I think he's right.
Christy sent some of those little powdered donuts home with me. And I was trying to make them last until Emil left town, but they didn't.
He didn't need any of those powdered donuts. That's a
Oh.
thing now in our family because the kids bought bags and bags and bags of those when John was in the hospital. And they talk about powdered donuts. It's kind of a fond memory, I think, that they have, because I don't normally buy them. I like them, but it's just, as my father-in-law used to say, sugar muscles. It's not anything good about them except the way they taste. But now I keep powdered donuts when the kids come because they like them. And I mean my kids, not my grandkids. They like them too.
Your big kids.
Yeah. Well, I discovered a new thing that I had never had before, but a very familiar. I guess I kind of have had it before. It's called saganaki in Greece, probably in Turkey too. Basically, it's just grilled cheese, like a slab. I don't know, like 4x6 that's got like panko breadcrumbs on it, and it's grilled. And it was good.
That sounds good.
I think I ordered that more than I should, but I loved it.
Sounds really
they had
good.
grilled. There's a cheese called halloumi. Do you know what that is? I think it's a sheep cheese.
I've only seen it. I don't know the word. I don't know what it means.
And it was the same kind of thing, except it was fried, and I can't remember what it was called. But the saganaki was grilled.
Yum.
And breaded and grilled. It was so good.
I've seen people put stuff like that in the middle of their salad, like a bed of arugula and then a plop of that square cheese in the middle.
Isn't that just feta, or is that something else?
I don't know what it is.
Well, feta is on Greek salads, and that was the best part about Greece to me.
Yeah.
Just
I meant like when
cheese.
they take a big square of cheese and like bread it and fry it and put it on top of a salad.
Yeah, I think that's feta. Maybe could be different stuff. Anyway, so what else you got? Anything before we talk a little bit about the trip?
No. I think I'm done.
Okay. Well, this is something I debated to bring up, and I'm going to try to do it as tastefully as possible. Right. And I told you a little bit about it, but I had my first experience with I'm not going to say what, I don't know what to call it, but in Israel, the bathrooms are all toilet. Well, I shouldn't say that, because there are certain places that have the hole in the ground.
Yeah.
It's interesting looking, because it's not just a hole in the ground. It's like a porcelain, a square, and it has like grooved sides for your feet, and then the hole in the ground. And it's not, you don't flush anything, but
it's all flush with the floor. It's all like straight up. You just stand on the grooves and aim.
Okay. So this was on Saturday, halfway between the trip, and all throughout Turkey, I kept seeing them, and we would laugh and try to avoid them, because I'd rather have a regular toilet. I hate using that word. But so on Saturday, at the middle of the trip, we were going from Turkey to Greece. And so we had to go through the process of crossing the border, had to present our passports, had to get out of the bus and go through this building and, get our passport stamped, go out the other side of the building. And the bus was waiting there. And then we went and had lunch not too far from the border. And we had a new guide. His name was James. Really, his name was Iakavos, but he said, you can call me James because that's easier. And he told everyone before we got off the bus, make sure you go to the bathroom before you get back on the bus, because it's going to be a long while before we find another toilet. So I did at the restaurant. And I think everybody else did. Yes.
Just saying that makes me have to go to the bathroom.
I know.
Just hearing somebody say that, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Pressure. And pressure's not a good word when you have to go to the bathroom.
That's right.
So So I did before we left the restaurant, and then we met everybody up. Everybody kind of had gone their own different ways to a different restaurant. So we met up, went back to the bus, got on. And when we got on the bus, I was like, kind of felt, you can kind of tell. And I was thinking, oh, great. Because sometimes that happens, you go and then you have to go right afterwards. And I was even careful about not drinking too much at lunch.
Well, when you get to a certain age, Carla.
That may have something to do with it. So we get about, I don't know, 15 minutes down the road. And yeah, for sure, I really need to go to the bathroom. And he had told us it's like 2 hours. And it's not just, sorry, the kind where you can wait, but sometimes you just have to go. And so I don't know why it happened, but it did. So I told John, and we sit on the front seat so that he can communicate with the guide and the driver. And I told John, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. And so John, he's like, didn't you go? And I said, I did, but I have to go again. And so he's like, okay. And he leans over to James and he says, is there any possibility of a bathroom? And I mean, we're in the flats here. Like, I'm looking around thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. And so James, our guide, said, oh, emergency? And John said, yeah. And so James and the driver spoke to each other in Greek, and I always hate it when they do that and in a different language because you don't know what they're saying.
You know what they're saying.
Like, this idiot person has to go to the bathroom. And so the driver said, is it a man or a woman, out loud, and John says, female. And so James gets on the bus on the microphone and says, we have an emergency bathroom situation. We're going to try to find a bathroom as soon as we can. And like, great. So everybody on this bus, I'm supposed to be the tour leader's wife, and I'm supposed to have gone to the bathroom. I wanted to stand up and say, okay, I did go to the bathroom, but now I have to go again. Okay. And so then you think everyone's wondering, well, anyway, I won't even go there. So he got on again the microphone and said, well, we're sort of in toilet desert here.
Oh no.
But we pulled off, and I could see like a gas station in the distance. And so he pulled in, and of course I have to be, he says, here, that's when he said the emergency thing. And I'm the first one off the bus. So everyone knew it was me, but like 10 or 15 other people got off with me. And so it's like your kind of worst nightmare bathroom situation where there were 4 bathrooms at the back of this gas station, but only one door was open. The others were locked. And it was one of what I call a squatty potty. And I'm thinking, I don't know, I've got to go. I must try to not tell all the details here because that would be really embarrassing. And there was no TP in there. And I had told everybody, one of the things that I always recommend to everyone, you always bring some, but I had left it on the bus.
Always travel with Kleenex and hand sanitizer.
Yes. And I did, but I left both on the bus. So anyway, I will skip to the end here and say that success. I was pretty proud of myself. That's the first time in my life. And I'm sure that there's many people who are listening who have been there, done that, and think it's no big deal, but it was a pretty big deal to me. And the end.
You are now a seasoned, hardened, tough world traveler.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
That. It was not a pleasant situation, but I conquered.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You came, you saw.
I conquered. Yeah. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Oh, I hope you play this part back for John, just so he can say what he wants to say.
He was very nice about it. He didn't make me feel bad at all. He just, sometimes it happens to everybody. And that's the first time I've ever had any issue like that in the 8 years we've been doing this. So I always tell people when they ask, I always say, I've just never had an issue with that. Not to say that you won't, but we've always been able to find. And then the rest, all through Turkey and Greece, you had the option. I mean, you could, depending on how bad you needed to go, you could go in the squatty potty, or you could go and wait your turn for the regular
Western toilet.
toilet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, can't believe I shared all that. Can we start over?
I was thinking about John. Don't be boorish and immature.
I know. Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little bit boorish.
No. See, it's a good segue into talking about your trip and all the places that you've been, and
Yeah.
which is what we get to do.
Yeah. So we thought we would just talk a little bit about the trip and the places that we've been. And I heard recently someone say, you should not need to go to Israel or Turkey or Greece or any of the places that are considered Bible lands because we walk by faith and not by sight. And I understand where they're coming from. And I know that the vast majority of people are probably not going to make it over there, which is exactly why we do what we do with the videos and the recordings and the photos and things, because so many people will not be able to see them in person. But for those who can, and I know you and I feel this in a big way, it has a way of bolstering your faith, and it has a way of bringing the Bible to life. And where you might see it before in black and white, you now see it in color, and you can understand why someone might say that they went up to Jerusalem when you're going south. You're reading it in maybe 2024 eyes, or with your eyes, that you just can't imagine what they mean. But then you understand that it has to do with elevation, that you go up, and when you're on the bus and you're going into Jerusalem, you're climbing and climbing and climbing. So you understand that. You understand distances, and things just make sense. And you see that everything that the Bible says is true, because it adds details that when you're just reading it casually, you might not think much about. Maybe it's talking about a king in the 5th century BC or something that I would have glossed over. But now you can look in history and see that really was a king in the 5th century BC. And you think about the House of David and how it's brought. They discovered a stele in Dan that talked about the House of David, when before there was no record of the House of David in that kind of sense. So anyway,
was that comment made by somebody who hasn't been there?
Has not been there, and was kind of taking issue with someone else who was.
I think but don't you think that's the root of that? Is usually, I've heard comments like that before, and usually it's somebody who hasn't gone, and I think they're just reacting to, when you come back from an experience like that, you're like, it was amazing, everybody needs to go, and somebody who hasn't been doesn't or can't understand, and it's not like you're coming from a place of saying, if you want to go to heaven, you have to visit the Holy Lands, or
right.
or that you come back more holy or more righteous, because that's not the case at all.
Not at all.
But you do have a greater appreciation for things. You do learn, you might, I know when we went the first time, I kind of expected to learn more as far as what things look like, being able to picture something in my mind. I expected that, but I learned so much more than that. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, is all the extra things that you pick up and learn that are just bonuses, and you didn't even expect to, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And it's so wonderful to be able to experience that you just want everybody to be able to do that, and everybody to be able to go and enjoy it. And so to me, that's probably why those kind of comments are made. It's just from somebody who hasn't been and maybe doesn't understand the zeal behind talking about it.
I understand where they're coming from, and I don't want to cast aspersion on anybody, but I don't take for granted the fact that we get to do that. It's sometimes I think, how in the world did we get here? And I can trace it back to certain things, but it's a blessing to see and to have my faith bolstered. And this trip for me was, I'm a person, I like to know what to expect. I like to know, where are we going the next day? Is there going to be a bathroom? where are we going to eat, and what kind of things are we going to see, and where is it connected? And this one was not easy in the fact that I didn't know what to expect. In Israel, we've been enough times that I know what to expect. I know where we're going, and I can kind of anticipate maybe some questions that people will have about certain things. And of course, I leave most of that to John, but this one, I don't know how many sites we went to. I wrote them down, but I had only been to two. I had been to Ephesus and Athens. So all of the other ones were new. And for me, it was like that fire hose that people talk about when you're taking all the information in, and it just feels like you're being sprayed with this fire hose, and you can't understand, or can't really, not that you can't understand, but you can't really
Absorb
take
it
it all in and
all.
absorb it
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right away. So I, just recovering from jet lag this week, I tried to take good notes. I wrote on my notability on my iPad, I wrote through Acts 17 and 18 when we were in Athens, the account of Paul on Mars Hill. And I left a margin on the side that I've been putting pictures in so that I'll have that next to it. And then I wrote Revelation 2, the account, the letters to the 7 churches. And I've got to go back and really look at it and study it and add some more things to it, because right now I'm still jet lagged, but I couldn't tell you a whole lot because I still need to go back and study and learn and absorb it all, which I think that's what we all have to do. Anytime you go, you have to kind of stop, back up, think about what is it that we saw here? What's the Bible connection? That's what John, I think, does so well, is that he
Yes,
makes those
he
connections
does.
between what you're seeing and what the Bible says, and how are they connected, and how is it going to bolster your faith. And anyway, we spent the first week in Turkey, and we went to 6 of the 7 locations that the letters are written to, the 7 churches of Asia. We went to Ephesus. We went to Smyrna. It's the guide said Smyrna, and
I
I've
was
always
gonna
read
say,
it Smyrna.
is that how you say that?
Yeah,
Smyrna.
but that's how he said it. We went to Pergamum. We went to Sardis, to Philadelphia, Laodicea, and we did not get to go to Thyatira because it was way far. And this was different too with Israel. It's such a small country. It's what, 120 miles north to south, and 60-ish, something like that, from west to east. But when you look at the countries of Turkey and Greece, they're huge. They kind of meet like this. And so we flew into Istanbul, spent the first day there, and then the next night we got up at 1:30 and flew down to Izmir, which is in the southern part of Turkey, and then kind of worked our way back up. And I don't think we're going to do that flight again. We were trying to save some time on getting down to some of those other locations, but anyway, that's beside the point. And then, so, we just couldn't make it to all the different locations. We've spent a lot more time on the bus this time than we normally do in Israel. And our guide, I was going to tell you about our guide. His name was Mali. This is the guy that we had in Turkey. And he was a genius. I mean, he's a Muslim. We are assigned guides from the tour agency that we connect with. And he told us that most every Muslim in Turkey is not really religiously active. They are Muslim by birth. He knew a lot about Christianity in general, in the big sense of the word, and tons and tons of history. Very, very smart guy. He treated us one night to what he called cheese dessert. It tasted to me like a buttermilk pie. It was really good. But he could not say his V's. It came out as W. And I hope nobody that's listening thinks that I'm making fun of this guy, because I am not. But we lost our breath laughing, not in front of him ever. Sometimes we'd have to turn around because we're not laughing at him at all. It was not any kind of deficiency on his part. It was just his accent. But you do not realize how many times a V comes into conversation, because he talk about, tomorrow we're going to Wisit, Laodicea. And he would say things like, well, there's so many vehicles on the road today. Or he would say, there are not any vowels in this word. So every time we come across a word with a V that comes out as a W, we just laughed and laughed. But my favorite one was I could, when you hear that over and over all day, I was reading the part about Paul in Synchrea, which we found out they call it Kinkria, but he had gone there because he had taken a vow. I read it in Malie's voice because he had taken a vow. Anyway,
That's
sorry,
cute.
not making fun. He was a great guide. He was very smart, very knowledgeable, gave us all kinds of information, but his V's came out as W's, and it was
That's
hilarious.
cute. I always remind myself in situations like that when I'm amused by somebody speaking English
Mm-hmm.
and, how they say certain words make it sound like a different word. It's very amusing, but at the same time, I'm going, there's this guy over here speaking 2 and 3 languages,
Yeah,
if not more.
exactly.
And I've just got English. So.
Yeah, and I can't even speak that very well all the time.
That's
So
right. That's
yeah.
right.
So anyway, we went to Ephesus, which you and I were there back in October. And
Mm-hmm.
what was your main like wow when you were in Ephesus? You taught for a while.
Well, Ephesus, to me, it was just how it seemed like everything was like more lavish than I expected. You could tell that they had a greater lifestyle, big houses, big theaters, big line of shops, and when I picture places in my mind when I'm reading the Bible, I don't picture it like that. And I
Mhm.
don't know why. It's not like it's an educated imagining in my
Yeah,
mind, but I always picture things like small scale mud homes and huts and things
right.
like that, and it's just completely inaccurate. And
Yeah.
like you were saying, that's one of the benefits of going and actually putting your eyeballs on the scene, because now when I go and read through what they've experienced and what life was like and the challenges that they face being Christians in those areas, I can fill it in, like you say, it's in color,
Hmm.
and I can
Hmm.
see it better, and it makes way more sense to me now, some of the things
Yeah.
that I read. And
Yeah.
so that's probably the thing that struck me the most with Ephesus.
Yeah. And the
Also, the fact
theater.
that Turkey itself is gorgeous.
Yeah.
What a beautiful country.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is. It's very mountainous.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the elevation of mountains like in Colorado, but
Mm-hmm.
that took me by surprise was
Me
the
too. Mm-hmm.
in Ephesus, there are mountains around, and it's a port city,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, not right immediately on the port, but it's not far from the water, which is why so many cruise ships go there. Excuse me. But something that was impressive to me there was the Agora, the marketplace, was not far at all. And I don't know that we went over there in October. Maybe you did, but the theater is right over here. And remember that street where they were play acting, the
Mm-hmm.
street fights and stuff. It's right over here. And so the account of when the riot began, which is Acts 16, I want to say, somewhere in there, is not far at all. So, thinking about the little household gods that were sold and the household idols and things, but the when they're shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians" for 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
in that enormous theater, and all of the people that must have been gathered there. I think he said that it held 60,000 people, and don't have any idea how many were there that day. But that was a pretty impressive thing to imagine, that those people there yelling, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians" over and over and over for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Ephesus was a neat place.
Well,
Smyrna,
and the
good.
temple, the temple to Artemis was much more massive than even the Parthenon
Mhm.
in Greece. And it was such a huge part of their daily lives and their culture. And they would have I remember learning all this when we were there. They had these festivals to her. And so for a Christian to try and live there and not participate in those festivals, to be able to sell their wares on the Angora in one of those
Mhm.
shops, they would have to be a part of a guild.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those guilds would choose Artemis as their goddess, their deity or whatever. And so when the guilds would meet together for their business meetings, the worship of Artemis was a part of that meeting. Christians wouldn't participate in that,
Right.
which meant they wouldn't be able to sell their wares. So a fishmonger would need to be a part of a guild in order to sell his fish. But he, as a Christian, couldn't be a part of that guild because he wouldn't want to be a part of the worship of Artemis. And
Right.
so when you see, Paul is writing to them about, what's right, step away from all this other stuff, seek truth, live truth, because you can just see how once you're there and you understand, you can see how they would go, but I need to feed my family.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to sell my fish and feed my family if I'm not, compromising in this way? And how easy it would have been to slip into that. And I think sometimes we read those things and we're like, it's idolatry. What's the big deal? It's
Right.
not just idolatry. It was
Mm-hmm.
their livelihood.
Right.
And so going and visiting places and learning that, it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
that
So the
would have
light
been
comes
hard.
on.
That would have been hard.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have been strong enough to say, my children are hungry?
Yeah.
And all I have to do is become a member of this guild and then I can sell my fish.
Mm-hmm. But it would be compromising. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. There's a library of Celsus there. There's the terraced houses, which I didn't get to go in this time, but you saw those last time too.
Yeah, that was
That
cool.
showed the opulence, really.
Opulence was the word
so,
that came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you see what's left of these things, like when you see the stone homes, they look really small. And they I'm sure were smaller than ours, but I tend to think of them as looking then like they look now.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have been whitewashed or decorated in a lot different ways than just the little outline of the homes that we're seeing. So it's just interesting to see, especially like in those terraced houses, the mosaics that are under glass that are so detailed and beautiful, and you just kind of can't help but imagining the sophistication level
Mm-hmm.
of the people that lived there and the influence that those sophisticated people probably had on the ordinary people of the town. Anyway, it just really gets your mind going when you see those things.
And speaking of the color, again, I'm picturing all their houses as brown. and
yeah.
and just seeing what's left, there's these beautiful white columns and the mosaics, like you said, so beautiful and colorful, and the frescoes, which word is frescoes?
Mm-hmm.
The paintings on the walls, you can still see a lot of that, and it was just vivid and beautiful and colorful, and these were their homes, and it's like recalculating.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is what I need to be picturing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Smyrna. We went to Pergamum. Pergamum was very interesting too. It was we had to ride a cable car to get. It's up on top of a high, not a mountain, I would say probably 2,000 elevation, but it's definitely up above the valley below. And if you read that account, it talks about, this is Satan's throne. It's where Satan dwells. And there are like, I don't want to say 5, 6 pagan temples up on top there, the remains of these temples. But he talks about Antipas, my faithful one, and how Antipas was put to death there. And it says that he was killed among you. And that was so touching to me to think about being a Christian in the midst of all of these pagan temples. And it was not a huge area. So, I need to go back and study that as well. But that was very interesting and touching to me to think about a place that was described as Satan's throne, but yet someone faithful lived there and died there for the name of God. So that was an interesting place. Thyatira was where we did not get to go. Sardis had a huge, I need to plug my computer in, had a huge gymnasium. And that was one of the places that, to me, they had made it look very modern in their restoration of it. And so it was a little hard for me to see and understand what it looked like before. But that was the place where, if I can say this the way John said it, in some of the inscriptions at the top above the lintels of the doors, it would have the Greek words for whoever paid for this monument, whatever. And there were areas where it was blank. There was nothing there. So it would have a name, and then there would be a blank space, and then another heading. And it talked about, John talked about how it was just the right size and space for a name that might have been there that was rubbed out for whatever reason. Someone that didn't honor the emperor or whatever may have had his name rubbed out. And yet the Bible talks about your name will never be rubbed out. So it's kind of one of those connections. And again, I'm probably butchering the way he said it, but that was at Sardis. I'll send you a picture of that. We went by nearby with the remains of a temple of Artemis, and there's not much of it left, but it was a beautiful sight. It was again on a high hill with views of higher mountains around it. And so that was interesting. We went to Philadelphia, and that was a little teeny tiny spot, maybe a city block, a very small city block. And there was just a tower there. Wasn't a whole lot to see there. Mm-hmm. But Laodicea, huge city, enormous city. And I was surprised by that. And there was some of these things get mixed up in my mind, but there was a temple there, I want to say, that had Nero, was in honor of Nero. I may be wrong about that. But we spent the night there in a place that had thermal springs, hot springs. Oh. And so Laodicea, mm-hmm. be cold or hot, or I will spew you out of my mouth. So it's an area that they were very familiar with, the hot springs. Mm-hmm. So that was in Turkey. And then Greece, we followed some of the footsteps of Paul, went to Troas. That was a port city, and Paul was there between, can't remember, it was right before he went to Neapolis. But you could see the ocean from Troas. So that was kind of another connection that I made. I never really thought about where exactly it was, but there's an old Roman road. There's not a whole lot there, but an old Roman road. We went to Neapolis, which is now called Kavla. And that, again, is a port city. We went to Philippi, which they call Philippi. Mm-hmm. And we saw the river that runs through, where Lydia, somewhere along there, would have met Paul. That was a touching area for me. It looked exactly like I pictured it in my mind. Sometimes you have mm-hmm. this picture and it's not anything like what reality. Of course, 2,000 years could change the course of the river. It may not be anything like it did then, but that spot did. And Sage Bridges, that was Sunday. We were there on a Sunday, and he preached, and we had a worship service together there. And just thinking about what happened there was touching to me. Yeah. And then we went and saw the remains of mm-hmm. Philippi, and there's a prison cell, which probably was not the prison cell. James gave us all kinds of reason why that was probably not the spot. But there was also a great big mountain behind Philippi that I didn't realize that connection. We went to Thessaloniki. Thessalonica is how I've always said it. Thessaloniki, that's how they say it. Didn't have a whole lot there to see, but it was a huge city, huge modern city. And in the middle of it, they had some old ruins that we didn't get to go down into. Went to Berea. We went to Delphi, he calls it Delphi, where the oracle was. Then we went to Athens and saw the Parthenon and the Acropolis. We saw Mars Hill. We saw the Corinth Canal, the modern one. And then we went to Corinth and saw the bema where Paul stood before Gallio. And there was a connection that I can't really remember. This is where the fire hose comes in for me. Like in Delphi, there was some kind of an inscription that talked about Gallio, who is in the book of Acts, where Paul went before this Roman, I think he was a Roman proconsul, and he didn't want to judge Paul. He said, deal with it yourself. He's, I'm a Roman, you're a Jew. Y'all take care of this yourself. I'm sure that's exactly what he said. But we saw the bema in this little column right before the bema, where the Gallio would have stood up on the judgment seat, and Paul was tied to this little column below. And then when Gallio wouldn't judge him, then they beat Sosthenes. So anyway, interesting stuff. We saw agoras everywhere.
Now, you've said bema a couple of times, and I'm sure I'm supposed to know what that is, but
the judgment seat. It's a platform.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think where you would have seen one in Israel. I think that there was one at Dan somewhere, maybe.
Right at the city gate.
Yeah. It didn't look like that here though in Corinth, but I'll post some pictures next week. But anyway,
Okay.
those were the places that we saw. And so I just thought I don't know, I didn't do a very good job of making those connections because I haven't had time to think about it a whole lot. But thinking about Israel and some of the things that have really made some connections for me, one of them was the Dead Sea and the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and how they could have survived as long as they did when they were found, I want to say in the 50s. And it's still almost all intact. And when you think about the dry air and where they were stored, above in an elevation where people wouldn't be going into on a regular basis, the story of the shepherd boy that threw a rock and it hit the jar that the scrolls were in, and then that led to the discovery of other scrolls. And just how God uses those kind of situations. He uses climate and geography and things to continually reveal his word when we need to know, or when people cast doubt on the Bible, more and more comes to light that prove it to be true. Mars Hill in Athens to me was one of the biggest things that I could see in my mind, because it's just below the Parthenon, Mars Hill, and it doesn't look anything now like I'm sure it looked then. Right now it's just a crumble of rocks, maybe, I don't know, would you say like 100 feet by 50 feet?
Yeah,
and
smaller than you might envision. Yeah.
And you climb and clamber over the rocks and things. They're slippery. It's a pretty dangerous kind of place to be. But when you read that account in Acts 18 of Paul saying that my God, this God that you worship in ignorance, he's the one that I'm speaking to you of, and he does not dwell in temples made with human hands. And right there is this temple that has been there for 500 years already when Paul was there. What a slap in the face in the way. And I know he didn't mean it as a slap in the face, but proof, just something that you could see with your eyes that they needed to hear and to understand. Excuse me. So what are some of the areas that you've been to that have had those eye-opening moments for you?
Well, I was thinking about Mars Hill also because, how many times have you read that passage? Men of Athens, I perceive that you are very religious. But to go and actually stand on Mars Hill and then look up at the Parthenon and its massiveness, and for him to say, I perceive that you are very religious, and it's just right there in front of him. And when we were there, the guide was explaining that they built it in the location that it was intentionally. It was high, very high elevation, lifted up, massive, because they wanted everybody to see it no matter which direction they were coming from. If you're making your way to Athens, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah.
And that's what's important to them. And so that to be able to stand there and see this is where Paul was, and I think I would have been way too intimidated and would have felt like this is a big deal to them. What's one person going to do to make a difference, to speak up for Christ? But Paul is not intimidated, of course, and stands and preaches and, says what they need to hear. And so it's little things like that the next time you go back and you read that account, you just read it completely different. The truth hasn't changed and it still says what it's always said, but your understanding of it is so much greater. Right. It's more enlightened, if you will, just because of what you've been able to see. Yeah. When it comes to Israel, Carla, it's just hard to even pick one because there are so many. I think our first trip there, the very first time I saw the wilderness area where we learned would have been where Jesus was, fasted for 40 days and was tempted and didn't look anything like I expected. And that's also the area where we learned about when Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan, that we call him, and there's a pathway there where you can just picture him saying, a man was traveling this way, and that's where we learned that for somebody to run across a dead body, it meant that they were responsible for that body. And so they had to take care of all the expenses involved with, the burial or whatever. And so that's why when Jesus is using this story and he says that the first guys going by, even though they were religious, they just passed on by. They didn't stop to help. And when you're there and you see that, and then you understand the culture and the laws, it makes a little bit more sense, because normally you would just read it and go, they're supposed to be religious. How could they ignore this guy? Well, he probably looked dead. And they, you don't want to hang around that wilderness area.
Yeah.
And they were probably in a hurry and trying to get on their way. And that's why they just passed them by. And then of course the Samaritan comes along, and it's just much greater understanding when you see it for yourself, and then you understand what all went into that, and there were many moments like that on our trips to Israel, where once you see something and then you learn a little bit more about the culture or the background or the geography, as you say, you just can't help but go, oh, and it makes much more sense, when you go back and read it later. Of course, the Sea of Galilee area, you cannot help but be moved when you're there.
Up on Mount Arbel, I thought about, when it talks about Jesus went up on a mountain to pray. We don't know what mountain it was, but that would make sense because it's the highest area that he could look down. And is it Acts 7 or 8 that talks about, no, it would have been one of the Gospels, not Acts. I want to say Luke 7 or 8. Says that Jesus went up on a mountain to pray, and about the whatever hour of the night, he had told the disciples to go to the other side. And from the top of Mount Arbel, you can see both the west and the east side because it's not that wide. It's like 8 miles wide. And so, in my mind earlier, thinking to go across, and then it says that about the third hour of the night or whatever it was, he looks down and he sees that they're struggling to get across to the other side. It later on, after having seen it, you think, well, how in the world human eyes could not see through a storm from up on a mountain, seeing through a storm to see the disciples still struggling in the boat. So, you understand that this is Jesus. He's the Lord. He could see things that we can't see, but it shouldn't have taken them, on a clear day to row across from the west side to the east side. I don't know. It might take an hour, do you think? Depending on the winds and stuff like that. But it had been hours that they had been out trying to get from one side to the other. And then it says that he went to them. This is the account where he walks on the water towards them. But that, just helped me to picture that scene even more, because he was looking with heavenly eyes, seeing these men that he loved and seeing their struggle. And he went to them and wanted to help them. And, but just the Sea of Galilee, Capernaum, going out there on the shore at Capernaum and looking and thinking about when Jesus appeared to the disciples after his resurrection, and when Peter's out in the water. Was it Peter, James, and John who are fishing? And John says, it's the Lord. And Peter throws himself in the water. I think it even uses that word that he threw himself into the water, or cast himself into the water. He couldn't wait to get to him. And Jesus was on the shore waiting, and just things like that. It makes you really understand and realize, not that you didn't before know that it was true, but now you can see it in your mind's eye. And the first time that John went, and I'm sure Neil was like this too, but the first time John went was in 98. And when he came back, his preaching changed. And not that he wasn't an excellent preacher before, but when he would describe things, he does it so much better than I do. You could see it. You could almost see it in your mind's eye, because he's describing it to you because he's seen it and been there. And, he loves geography and archaeology and all that now, that I guess he didn't have the same appreciation for before he went. So anyway, those are just some of the things and some of the reasons why you and I both love to visit the Bible lands, and encourage people, if at all possible, to go and to see. And if you can't, you can look at the videos that John has put together with Matt Kane went with us this time again, and he's a videographer that works on the videos there at World Video Bible School. And we enjoyed being with he and Esther. She got to come along with him this time too, but they'll be working on new things, doing In the Steps of Paul. They're wrapping up the temple project. And so anyway, it's just,
They're so very well done.
I think so too.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome.
Anyway, we're at an hour and 20 minutes. And remember, we talked about this being a short one.
Because you have things to do.
Yes, we're packing up and heading out at 5 a.m. So
Oh
yeah,
dear.
need to get going.
Mhm.
Well, do you have something good this week? Something good for you? Something
I
good for me?
do. I have something good for everybody. I'm gonna share my husband's blog. I don't
Oh,
know
good.
how long he's been writing for this blog, but it's preacherpollard.com. And in the past, maybe 3-4 years or so, he's invited his sons to join him. And so
Mhm.
they all take turns. And I think Neil's Monday, and then each of our 3 sons take a day after that to write the articles. And then Neil's brother does it
Mhm.
on Friday. And so there's always something good. And then in addition to that, Neil has started putting, he does like a scripture kind of exposition every day where whatever he's read in his morning Bible study, he does like a little write up about it. And he has added that to the blog as well. So every day, you can see wherever he's studying in the Bible and stuff too. But I just thought I'd share a little blurb. The article, what's today? The article that was yesterday was one that Gary, our oldest son Gary, wrote called Good Stuff to Do. And it's from Colossians chapter 3, which I thought was appropriate because Colossians 3:1 and 2
Yeah.
is our theme verse for this podcast. But he talks about the positive actions in Colossians that God wants us to do. And just a couple of things like under be kind. One of the things he said is that be kind here is a word very closely connected with the concept of helping others. It's a catch-all that really means be someone who benefits other people.
Mm.
And under be humble, he was talking about God wants us to have a balanced view of ourselves. We're heirs of the kingdom, but we're no more important than any other Christian. And then under be patient, he says that having a balanced view of self, we're also willing to put up with shenanigans of other people, that sometimes people can be hard to love, but patience puts up with others' weaknesses while we try and show them God's love. And then under don't be angry with each other, he says this one line that I really loved: be good when you don't want to until God's love perfects your mindset.
Mm.
And so anyway, it was just a really great article and I loved it. And I thought, that's going to be something good for you that I share is
So that was
Neil's.
Gary wrote that on Neil's blog.
Yes.
Okay.
So this was the article that came out on Neil's blog yesterday, the Preacher Pollard blog, preacherpollard.com. So you can
That's
go
good
to
stuff.
that and you can subscribe to it, send them your email, and it'll come into your inbox every day with a new article and get some good encouragement.
It blows my mind how much Neil writes and doesn't seem to struggle at all with that. And anytime I try to write, I don't know what to write, how to write. So it's
Same.
impressive to me.
Yeah.
It's a great writer.
Thanks.
Well, your blog is really good too. So
thanks.
yeah, lifeandfavor.com, right?
Yes.
There's no lifeandfavor.wordpress. It's just
No, it's
lifeandfavor.com.
It's
Okay.
life-and-favor.com is the actual thing. But yeah,
Okay.
what's your something good for you?
Mine is something that I just discovered this week, and it's a packing. Okay, it looks like just an ordinary square plastic thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you open it up,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're listening and not watching, I'm sorry for all the extra noise. It becomes this.
Is this a disappearing
Bag.
trick?
No, it's a bag.
That's huge.
It's a big box. It's a huge box, and it zips shut, and it has handles. And I have found these this week to be so helpful. I'll send you a picture of it.
Is it
But
vinyl
it folds
or something?
up, huh?
Is it vinyl?
It's maybe. It's like a kind of like a coated canvas.
Okay.
But it's not that thick. I don't think it's vinyl. I think it's just plastic. But it's supposed to hold 65 pounds.
Wow.
Without busting. Yeah. And so I have packed those, like my quilts and pillows and soft things that we can just shove in between stuff and it won't get dirty in the trailer. But I've also put boxes, I put things in boxes, but then I put the boxes in there so that it's easy to stack in the trailer. And it was like $15 for 6 of them. Wow. I when we first started doing this back and forth 7 years ago, I bought a bunch of big tubs, Rubbermaid tubs. They're like, I don't know, 4 feet long and 2 feet high. And I've used them every time since then. And they're great. They stack in the trailer. But I needed some more, but I didn't really want to have to store them. So I went looking for another option. And this is what I came across. And so far, maybe I should have waited until we got home with them to see if they really don't bust when we pack them. Right. But I think that John said, well, let's just see how they pack. We'll find out. But so far, I've been really impressed with them. And the zippers work great. And there's a canvas strap that you can carry them with. So anyway, the students are going to
collapse down to nothing.
Yeah. So it'll be easy to store them when we're not using them. But the students are going to come, let's see, in 3 hours to help us load the trailer. And I'm not quite ready. So probably should wrap it up here.
Yes. And again, be praying for you. Lots ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Be thinking about you and praying for you.
Thank you. I appreciate those prayers from you and other people. It's been a good conversation. I hope that my jet lag hasn't made me sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But, sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. As surprising as that is, I'm sure.
You always sound like you know what you're talking about.
It's been fun to talk about, and it's helped, when I was kind of jotting some notes down, it kind of helped me this was just like a week ago, helped me to sort of organize my thoughts, and I'll be doing my own study so I can really understand a little bit more about these locations and the connections to Bible things. So thank you for
I loved it.
Your input, and I love that we've been able to do that together, and I know and pray that we'll be able to do it again. So thank you to everyone who's stuck with us for this hour and a quarter, or almost an hour and a half now. We appreciate all of you who listen to us, who pray for us, who comment, give us your ideas, your thoughts. I am the one that is supposed to be kind of on top of the social media stuff, and I haven't been so much because we've been out of it, but I will get back on that next week, and because we love input, we love hearing from y'all. So thank you for that. So unless you have anything else, until next time,
keep looking up.
All right. I love you. See you later. All right.
Bye-bye.